story with a bit of local flavor here to kick us off. Some of you may know. I mean, I guess I don't really advertise it very much, but I work in a remote job that has some coworkers of mine work in the same city that we live in, Halifax. Others work around Canada. And I was recently in a training for my job, and one of the people who was also in the training is one of my coworkers from Halifax. I had worked with him before, hadn't really met him. It's a remote job. You don't really see each other. So we were sharing something about ourselves on the first day of training, and I said, of course, I have a podcast called Elwood City Limits, the Episodic Arthur podcast. And this fella, his name is Noah, he related that he was once mistaken for either you or me, Lucas.
What?
He posted an Arthur meme on like a message board or something, and somebody noted that he was like posting from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and they messaged him and was like, "Are you the guy who does Elwood City Limits?" And obviously
he said no. Yeah.
No, yeah. No, he copped to it, but his name's Noah. He's a good dude, but it was just like, so we're not famous,
no,
but we're maybe like small letter K known
by at least someone. By you, the Elwood City Limits faithful for sure.
I mean, it's just, I just wanted to make sure to say that on the show. It's just a funny old thing that happened, and I absolutely didn't expect to, I don't know, like, it's almost like being noticed, like, because we don't, from working in radio to now, people don't really notice us, so to speak, on the street or something. But this is, I feel, is as close as you can get to that.
It's true. Soon, I hope to be, yeah. I mean, someone spotted us. They knew we were going to be there, but we had a dear Elwood City Limits fan show up to the yard sale as well this past weekend.
Yeah. Chelsea sought us out on Instagram and happens to be a local listener. It was wonderful to meet Chelsea as she makes her way through the ECL backlog. And as we add one more to that backlog, because it's time for the final Arthur episode of Season 14. Will Young is who I am. Lucas Mancini over there as well. Lucas, great yard sale, by the way. I'm still enjoying. I have this little Full Metal Alchemist figure that is now dangling from my mic stand that I picked up there, among many other great things. In fact, your lovely girlfriend sold me a copy of The Crow on DVD, which I'm very happy about.
R.I.P. Brandon Lee, and I'm glad it's found a great home.
Yeah, and it seemed, I mean, you chose a heck of a day to do it. It was scorching outside. You were keeping yourself going with some morning and noontime alpines. But did you have a good time?
Wow, put me on blast, the podcast. But yeah, no, that's, vitamin A, Alpine. That's the fuel that keeps me going. No, I had a good time, and I appreciate you and, of course, Chelsea for coming out, and everybody who came out, really. And now, for those of you who are unfortunate enough to follow me on Instagram, it's back to your regular scheduled programming. No more me spamming that I'm having a yard sale. And we can continue on with the rest of the summer.
Until the next yard sale, of course.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we're going to get into this episode in just a moment. A couple things that we want to talk about. First, we only have one email that I wanted to highlight here, which you can, of course, send in your emails, elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. This one is from Nick, who is a longtime podcast listener, first-time emailer, going through the back catalog for the second time in a row. Thank you, Nick. At the episode where they talk about BINKY the band. Thought you would like to know that the English translation of this song that they play in the episode, it's actually quite disturbing but interesting. So this is a little long. I'll just give you the quick hits here. So of course we're talking about the song that BINKY sings, the na 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 na, which is an actual song. We talked about that in the episode. So here's a little bit of that.
It's the one that's like wheel wheel wheel, oh wheel 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 wheel. That one, right?
You got it. The wheel wheel. So here's what the actual lyrics are by, I believe this is a Swedish or a Nordic band of some extraction. Let us young girls sing, so that others will hear too, so that this village's boys don't think us quite mute. Sorrows I'll throw along the road, and joys I'll take with me. When I see a pretty boy, there I'll stay the night. These boys are like something from behind the wall. Anyone who takes that one must be crazy. The boys in this village should be put into a single gap in the fence, squeeze with pliers, and forge with a hammer. The girls in this village are... not reading that one. I'm that little girl, tiny like a cat, and I wouldn't be anywhere else but in the boys' rooms. People call it a sin, and a sin I suppose it is, to go and to lie next to that wild boy. Wee 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 wee. I love there's no translation for the wee wee.
Okay, I was gonna say, so that must be like the verses, not the chorus, because there's no way wee 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 turns into all of that. So that's like parts of the song that we don't really hear in the episode.
Yes, but if you listen to the first Arthur album, like Arthur's Almost Real Not Live CD or tape, which we do have an older review of that just went up on our YouTube channel, you do get to hear the full song. They did license that full song for commercial use with the Arthur brand. Thank you, Nick. ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com, as always, if you'd like your email read on the air. We have some really cool stuff coming up on the Elwood City Limits Patreon, and we're going to let you know about that near the end of the episode. But of course, the most recent offering was an episode of For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast. This time we talked about Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. It was the winner of a very hotly contested patrons poll, and we had a really good time talking about it and finding out more about it. And I think you would like to hear it too. You can check out the preview on the free feed, or you can, subscribe to the Patreon. It's pay what you want, and you get dozens more podcast episodes, commentaries, and exclusive interviews and content, video content, and more over there. We also want to say thank you to everyone who has nominated us for the Best of Halifax Awards put on by The Coast, which is a weekly magazine over here. The nomination period is over, so now we're going to have to see if your work paid off, and if so, we will move into the voting period.
Thank you, everybody, for voting for us.
I think speaking of Patreon, we're saying thank you to some lovely patrons, including some new ones. We have some new patrons who have joined us since the last time, such as Cecil Robinson, or perhaps Cecil Robinson. We have Vincent, Maria Gisselquist, Grace Cole, Wasatch Wind, Dear Miss Elizabeth, a.k.a. Z, and Chloe. Now, if I got any pronunciations on those wrong, please tell me. But we also have long-timers like Cat Dog and Jeff L., Josh Andallo and Laura Ashley, Ricardo A. Soto, Alexandria Dukes, Charlie Heckman. We got Jolo Flo and the Flying Sparks 32. We got Shander Lefebvre Boughton and John Griswold, Ian Collis, Baby Show Addict Bob Yee, Allison Archambault, Valeria, Matt, Andrew Power, Sierra S., and many, many more. If it's been a while since we've said your name in the Patreon roll call, please let us know, and we would be happy to say it. Okay, last Arthur episode, Season 14. It's Buster Spaces Out is the first one we're talking about, and this is absolutely appropriate, something that I'm surprised you haven't done before. Oh. Buster is watching the moon landing on TV.
Yeah, and it's a part of me feels like, this is addressing something that we've talked about on the show. Buster has had this kind of conspiratorial nature.
Yes.
He's never one to think that the most obvious explanation is the explanation. Instead, he's quick to assume it's aliens or some sort of supernatural occurrence. Mm-hmm. And so we get this moment here where I almost feel like the Arthur writers are retconning Buster's conspiratorial nature, or at least curbing it for the future, because we've talked about, Buster's probably going to end up being a Joe Rogan listener. There's a lot of early seasons 1 through 3 conversations we've had about, what would Buster be like as an adult. And here we get Buster asking his mom about, what is this sci-fi show? And his mom's like, that's not a sci-fi show. That's something that actually happened, allegedly. The moon landing. And Buster just immediately accepts it. He's just like, okay, yeah, nothing to see here. This is exactly the narrative. In fact, I believe that Bixie her exact line is, "It quote unquote really happened." So basically, the show is getting ahead of our line of speculation that, Buster wasn't going to think that the moon landing is real, as well, along with numerous other things that people tend to think aren't real. So not the case. Buster does believe in the moon landing. In fact, I would go as far as to say that he probably believes the Earth is also round. So not our worst fears will have been quenched. And yes, this is what gets Buster interested in space and going to space.
Yeah, the singular line from Buster was, "That's real?" And I'm like, ugh, but we went right past it. So yeah, you're right. I also want to note here, it starts off with Buster kind of channel surfing, and we hear a little bit of a little bit of audio from what he's watching. One of those is a Mary Mookow song. I guess, did they uncancel it, or is that just still in reruns where Dark Bunny used to be?
This takes place early in the timeline before Mary Mookow was canceled.
Yeah, so we deal with a little bit of a reflexive timeline here and there. So this inspires Buster to become an astronaut, but his first step is to get a model rocket from a store called Alexi's Hobbies. But he's having a little bit of trouble building it. It's a little bit more advanced than he realized. It's a skill level 5, as Arthur points out. And this is one of those models. It reminds me of like getting into Gunpla and all the like Gunpla beginners videos that I've watched, because every once in a while I'm like, maybe I should start doing that, and I haven't started yet. If somebody wants to buy me a Gunpla model, that's how I could start. But you have to be careful with those skill levels, because with this one, Buster is having to work hot glue, he's having to work screwdrivers and different parts, and so this is a real hobby grade.
Yeah, I believe Arthur points out that it's a level 5 kit.
Yeah,
and in terms of difficulty, and that Buster should have started with something easier, probably like at a level 1 or something.
Absolutely, and when I was a little bit older than Buster in grade 7, I had a project where I had to build a like World War II fighter plane, and that was tough. That wasn't a skill level 5, but still like. It involved like sanding and gluing, and it was beyond my skill level. I needed help from my parents for that one.
Now, if you had completed said World War II fighter plane and then your sister threw it out the window, do you think you'd punch her in the face over it? And do you think you would be justified in doing so?
Well, let's see. My sister would have been like 19 at the time. So if I'd have done that, she probably would have knocked me out. So it wouldn't have ended well for me. Buster has, the components all over the floor. At one point he says there's an order to my disorder, which very familiar to myself with ADHD. So he's working on it all night. He eventually falls asleep. He has a dream where he goes to the moon in like a real rocket ship, but he doesn't exactly know how to like actually pilot the rocket ship. So he overshoots the moon and then can't turn around. And mission control is no help. In fact, it's just staffed by a talking mouse. So figure this one out with the animal hierarchy. It's a mouse that talks and just says, "Bring back more cheese." He ejects the laundry a la Airplane. Oh, yeah. Man, I didn't think about that. That's actually probably where they got that. We do see El Boomerang among the laundry in that dream. And there is a part here where he, like, is radioing for help. And he gets, like... There's, like, a moment where the Mary Mookow singing comes back that he was watching on TV. But it's, like, really garbled and, like, bit crushed. It was creepy. Like, it actually kind of creeped me out. I love when Arthur does that because you never... Even though it's done it plenty of times before, you never expect it. It always comes out of left field.
Yeah, if there's anything about season 14 that I think is most commendable and most reminiscent of the early seasons of Arthur, the dark imagination sequences have returned in full force. I mean, what's more horrifying than dying alone in the cold, empty vacuum of space?
Oh my God. This is supposed to be an escape,
crying out
Lucas.
For help. Going off into the void.
We're supposed to be not adding to people's woes. We're supposed to be taking away from them here.
Hey, blame Arthur, not me.
So Buster realizes that he needs help with this. He's got to enlist the help of the Arthur gang to build the rocket. They comprise Rocket Team Buster, and Buster gives them different roles within the group. First of all, I forget exactly what position he gives Arthur, but his rationale is that Arthur is calm, cool, and collected, which we have 14 seasons of evidence why that's not true.
Yeah, I suppose there's no risk of, like, the rocket calling him a baby or something. And so, the things that Arthur usually freaks out and flips his lid about are probably not at risk of happening here. And, he's pretty studious. He's good at, like, reading stuff, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, everybody's assigned their roles, and they address the elephant in the room immediately. Why not deputize Brain in this endeavor? He's built multiple rockets, I think, over the course of this series, and these weren't any model kit. These were like legitimate devices and stuff he's put together, and they easily write him off. He's visiting his family in like Texas or Arizona or something. So
Texas.
He's not here for this episode. So we kind of get a mishmash of characters, some of which we don't normally see. George, who we haven't really had in an episode for a while, is in the crew. Also, Carl's back.
Yeah, I was really happy to see Carl. And as the episode goes on, it uses him as not just like a token. It's not like a token cameo or something. He has a important role within the team. And I thought this was great.
I would almost go as far as to call him Brain Plus, because he only gives, the factoids when it's relevant to the conversation, and it doesn't feel like he's doting over anybody or trying to impress us with his intellect. He's simply trying to be helpful.
He just he loves machines. He loves trains, and he loves rocket ships.
Yeah.
So he just is expressing that. When Buster is going through the different roles, like Francine is a leader, and then it's just like, and Muffy, you have the biggest backyard that we can do this in. And Muffy says, "You just want me for my yard?" Which I thought was funny. and just to go with you on the it's a bit of a swerve with Brain's non-involvement, because Buster says just because Brain is a genius doesn't mean we should ask him for his help every time something is hard. And I was like, yeah, that's actually a good point. And then Arthur says to George, he's in Texas visiting family. And Buster just quickly says, he said he'd check in every now and then. Very funny exchange. I'm not doing it justice, but I liked that.
Also, we forgot to mention that Francine is basically declared leader of the operation. And so she starts to dole out the roles. And here, I was talking earlier about, it's nice to see Carl back, good use of some underused characters. But in some ways, it's 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, because I feel like last episode we watched, I was like, oh, this is like a good Muffy episode. It's good use of Muffy. And we're back to the Muffy of old in this one, because everybody's trying to kind of... First, there's chaos. They're trying to delineate tasks, and it's not working, and so that's when Buster makes Francine leader. But then, Muffy's kind of incensed that she doesn't get to work on the parachute, because that was the part that involves most decoration. And instead, she's complaining that she has to work on the engine, and you can't decorate the engine. And Muffy's just kind of being annoying this time. Usually, I feel like they play to Muffy's strength. It's like, yeah, Muffy's a girly girl. She likes fashion. She likes style. And the show is
good with finances.
Exactly, and the show has evolved to kind of play to those strengths instead of making them annoying. But here, Buffy just seems like she doesn't even understand the point of what they're all doing. It's like she's really getting on my nerves in this episode.
Yeah.
And then eventually she goes really far and she rips the parachute. Their one parachute that came with the set. Which, all right, Miss Moneybags, I hope she paid Buster back, because he was the one that bought the thing.
She did offer to buy a replacement, but that was the only one that they had. So I guess she just got off scot-free from there. Yeah, so the parachute ripping, they separated the rocket into 3 different construction phases or parts, I should say, that different teams worked on. So they don't have the parachute anymore, so it's incomplete. And they're kind of drowning their sorrows a bit at the Sugar Bowl when who should they meet but a special guest for this episode, a real-life astronaut for NASA, Mike Fink, who is very quick to tell them not to give up. He tells them about a time when he had a rip in his suit on the International Space Station, nearly lost his air due to a leak, but he got back in and it was okay.
Now, Will, be honest. Prior to this, Had you ever heard of Mike Fink in your life?
Never. Never.
And I was thinking to myself, and I was like, it's not really fair, because if I had to name astronauts, I'd probably run out of names real quick. It's like, okay, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin. At that point, I think one of them was dead, and the other one may have been too old to appear on this Arthur episode. So I don't blame them for trying to get someone a little bit more current. But beyond that, it's like, I don't know, Chris Hadfield, because he wrote all those books, and he's kind of such a... that might be more of a Canadian thing, too, because he's Canadian. We all know about him. And
Roberta Bondar?
See, now we're already getting outside of my area of knowledge, but this Mike Fink character I was not familiar with, and it doesn't help that he kind of has what I call Matt Damon Arthur syndrome.
Yeah.
In that he is just kind of his face with ears. I will say that, he has a very kind, friendly-sounding conversational voice. It's nice that he appeared on this Arthur episode, but I will also say that, let's say he is definitely not a professional voice actor, and sometimes he delivers these line reads, and it's like, I feel like he didn't have the context for what he was saying. Like the line read sounds a little bit stilted, or it doesn't kind of work in the conversation, in the context of the show.
Right, yeah. I thought he was decent. I think we've had, run the gamut. We've had some really good non-professional voice actors, and we've had some, what were you going to get out of them kind of performances. I thought this was fine, but certainly nothing amazing. Yeah, just, in case you're as in the dark about Mike Fink as we are, he was the commander of the International Space Station, NASA astronaut. He's also the former record holder of the most time spent in space at 381.6 days. He's now the second most person. He's spent the second most time in space of American astronauts, but he's up there. So Mike Fink tells them about the story, tells them not to give up, and they start to think of what can they use instead of the parachute. And they briefly consider slathering the rocket in mashed potatoes, because shout out to the guy at the Sugar Bowl buying a bowl of mashed potatoes and that's it. That's my guy right there.
Yeah, sitting at the diner, there's a lot of questions. Like it's true. It doesn't even. It's the Sugar Bowl, right? I didn't even know you could get savory stuff at the Sugar Bowl. So lots of revelatory moments here. Also, I'm surprised Carl didn't speak up and say adding a bunch of mashed potatoes would totally make the the rocket weigh a ton more. Not a literal ton, but figuratively, mashed potatoes are heavy. That's a lot of dense. It's probably gonna mess with your whole lodge, but they think better of it, and instead the waitress serving the mashed potatoes has a colorful handkerchief, a bandana, and they decide to use that as a parachute instead.
Yeah, and it turns out to work much better. Now, the launch day that they've prepared for is initially rained out, and that's also very disappointing. But they managed to use a small break in the weather between rain to be able to launch it successfully, and it works, including the newly fashioned parachute out of the bandana. Francine neglects to recover it at first, which it's just kind of floating down with the parachute. But hero of the day, Mike Fink, ends up recovering it because he was busy buying a whole pumpkin pie. I think it's pumpkin pie from the Sugar Bowl, because apparently it's just that good. Every time you see Mike Fink, he's talking about this pie. It's that good.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of an Agent Cooper bent to him, how he's so obsessed with this pie. And then he's again, I actually am endeared to Mike Fink's performance in this episode. I feel like it feels like I'm ragging on him, but it just really stood out to me, his delivery. He's like, this is the best pie I've ever had. And then later on, he's like, can I get an umbrella over here? When he gets caught in the rain with his pie. It's just kind of a strange delivery, but I got a kick out of him.
My favorite delivery of his was when, he's taking the pie home and it starts to rain again, and then Buster finds him and puts his umbrella over him, and he just goes, I'm fine, son. Protect the pie. So yeah, he returns the rocket, and they invite Mike Fink back to Muffy's place for thinking about Buster wants to go to Venus when he becomes an astronaut. Does Mike Fink want to come along? So yeah, it's very much, you can tell that Mike Fink at least sounds like a nice guy. So I think that really comes across, even if he's not, the best actor. And that's usually what helps a lot of Arthur guest voices, is that as long as they sound like they're nice people, then you can forgive any, he didn't cycle into acting. He decided to become an astronaut instead, which is perfectly fine. And now a word from us kids. Just quickly, I don't really have anything to say about this, but it's neat. It's a science club for girls as they learn about how rockets work, and they do different science experiments. Some of them involve blowing up balloons. Others involve, like, what was the thing they did in the classroom? Was it like with baking soda or something?
It was, some sort of reaction where they put like baking soda and something else in a tube, and it caused a reaction where like something flew out of the tube. Some women in STEM stuff. We got to get more women in STEM, Will.
Absolutely, I agree. All right, last Arthur story of season 14. After this.
Hey everybody, it's Lucas from the Elwood City Limits podcast, and if you love ECL, there's a couple of ways to keep up with us. You could go to facebook.com/Elwood City Limits, at ECL Podcast, that's our Twitter. We take questions on Tumblr. It's elwoodcitylimits.tumblr.com. There is an Instagram as well, Elwood City Limits on Instagram. Of course, if you want to donate to the show and get exclusive content, whether that's our full-length commentary of the Arthur movies, our brand new bi-weekly PBS Kids review show, as well as our video game movie reviews with the Sonic movie review and Pikachu movie review, you can check out patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. And that's also going to get you access to the Elwood City Limits Discord, which me and Will like to post in from time to time. And if you want that sweet, sweet Elwood City Limits merch, check out teespring.com/stores/Elwood-City-Limits-store. You can listen to the podcast at libsyn.com/Elwood City Limits, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and there's other podcast apps like Stitcher, and if we're not on your favorite app, let us know. And where can you let us know? Well, that's going to be at elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. That's also where you can send us a question, and we'll read it on the show. Finally, if you want to support the podcast, the best way to do so is to tell a friend who likes animation or Arthur or just podcasts in general, and to go to our iTunes page and rate us out of 5 stars. Apparently, that helps podcasts out. Bye, everybody!
And how appropriate, The Long Road Home is the name of this final story for
It's been a long road getting from there to here. It's been a long time. All right, that's fine. That's enough.
I've got faith of the heart.
No, folks, despite what you might be thinking because of me and Will's song, this is not a Star Trek Enterprise themed episode of Arthur. It is instead actually not what I thought it was going to be about. Let's take it away with this cold open.
Yes, so finally, after an entire Arthur season of a background story, we get a conclusion to the El Boomerang saga with who else but Adil, Arthur's Turkish pen pal. So Adil comes across El Boomerang, literally like falls into his lap from nowhere.
Which, by the way, is the implication that Buster's dream was canon because it fell from the sky? Because I was like, oh, okay, was El Boomerang actually in orbit? I wish I remembered where El Boomerang ended up in the episode before this. Last time we talked about this on Elwood City Limits. That would have led to it, getting into orbit and now crashing down in Turkey. But yes, it does literally fall from the sky.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm sure some of our listeners do, though. So Adil finds El Boomerang. He tells Arthur about it over video chat. So now they're video chatting together. They're like doing a Skype call. And Arthur's like, well, wait, is that like... Adil holds it up and it's El Boomerang. He's like, wow, I can't believe it. Can I get you to send it over to me? So Adil packages it to Elwood City. He returns home, Arthur does, and he's going to give Alberto the ball back. He's originally going to just give it to him, but then Alberto invites him to his birthday, so Arthur's going to give it to him as a present. Now, I wasn't exactly sure where this was going at first. It does unfold in a way that you wouldn't expect. I will also say it sounds like they either recast Adil's voice or the original voice actor for Adil, like, grew up. Like, his voice sounds a lot deeper. A lot deeper than 8 years old. So, what this actually has to do with, for most of this episode, more than El Boomerang, is George. This is a George episode. So, George is he's the last leg in a relay race with Francine, I think it's Jenna, and maybe Sue Ellen is on his team. I know Sue Ellen was involved. But he ends up choking in this relay race. He just can't make it in time to win. And he, like, runs out of breath. He's just not much of a runner. And Francine kind of humiliates him about it. She's really, like, cruel about it. We know Francine's a sore loser and a sore winner, but this was still, like, man, yeah, she was really dogging him for this.
We got throwback Muffy in the first episode. Now we're getting some throwback bully Francine in this one.
You're right. And, like, it continues past this as well. So George decides that he wants to, I guess, just build up endurance, even though he hates running. So he's kind of running around. He's trying to get a bit more in shape. And he gets the idea to do a walk from Crown City, which is kind of like the Shelbyville of the Arthur universe, to Elwood City. And this is inspired by, he runs across Buster and Arthur in the Sugar Bowl, and Buster tells George about how his uncle tried to do that walk once. It took him about 7 hours, but he twisted his ankle at the end and never completed it. Now, Lucas, to your point about, like, where El Boomerang ended up, we do get a little, I wouldn't say a throwaway line here, but Buster actually gets it 100% right. Because he's like, I think it went to France, and then it went into space, and then it went to Turkey, and then Arthur's like, Buster, you're ridiculous, something like that. But he actually gets it totally right. So it's
also,
a little.
Before we move on,
yeah.
Fit check on George's running outfit.
Dude, yes.
A couple of things to mention. George is dressing in this episode. So we got him in the 5-inch inseam shorts. Check. Okay. The ankle socks all the way back in style. We want your socks to be hitting that mid calf, and it's got the two-tone. So that's looking good as well. We got the red chucks in Arthur staple. Every character's got those. But then of course the matching red headband and wristbands. But the centerpiece of the outfit, if I saw this like at a thrift store, I would lose my mind over this shirt. The I Heart Norway shirt with the Norwegian flag. What a piece this is. It looks like a ringer tee that also, says I Heart Norway. This is just an all-around great outfit. And of course the fanny pack too. He's got the fanny going. Good on George. Both functional and stylish for his long distance run.
Yeah, a lot of this seems to be back, and like it's pretty close to like that really fetching bootleg Bart Simpson t-shirt that you had at the yard sale. I wish everybody could have seen it. It was really something. But yeah, no, I also loved the t-shirt. I thought this was really cool, but I'm glad that you kind of we've got another huge fit to assess later in this episode.
Oh, yes, we do.
So George decides that he wants to do this walk, and he's going to do one better. He's going to raise money for autism research, which I thought was really cool. He has like a sign-up sheet for pledges for everybody that he goes around to, and this is where, again, Francine kind of gives him guff about it. She literally laughs in his face that he could even do something like this. And even though she signs up to give him money, it's like $1 for every hour that he walks or something like that.
Yeah, and Francine gives him 50 cents, but she's kind of like patronizing about it.
Very, and like literally laughing in his face. We do also see there's like a montage of George getting everybody's signatures, and we see like BINKY also laughing in his face about this, but then he also signs. Muffy offers to like completely pay for everything if George brings along this really garish Mr. Crosswire balloon. It's like a balloon of his head, which I thought was kind of funny. So yeah, he gets a bunch of these. He also mentions to Mr. Ratburn that he's going to go on this walk. And Mr. Ratburn signs up even though he doesn't realize it's for a pledge. And we'll get back to that in a second. So meanwhile, Arthur is in possession of El Boomerang. He's going to give it to Alberto, and he's really excited of how Alberto will react. In fact, he's so excited he has a dream.
Okay.
Just to quickly explain. So Alberto is so over the moon in Arthur's dream. Alberto got a helicopter for his birthday, but the return of El Boomerang is even better. So great is this gift that he decides that he and Arthur are Ketchup brothers.
So to add to the strangeness of all this whole sequence of we get from El Boomerang to helicopter to Ketchup brothers all happens in very quick succession. It's like 30 seconds. So really, and here's the key, Will, is I looked at my phone or away from the screen or something, so I missed the context that Arthur falls asleep and then this happened. So I was watching and I literally just thought this was the scene where he gives him El Boomerang. And so when he's like, I like it even more than my helicopter, I was like, what? And then he was like, let's be Ketchup brothers. And I was like, what? What is this? I was taken aback and it wasn't until he then wakes up and I was like, oh, okay, it was a dream. But the whiplash from one, Alberto is wealthy enough to have a helicopter, to two, I was like, Ketchup brothers, what? This was something else. Even with the context, watching it again, that it is a dream, this is, like I said, season 14, the dream sequences have been top notch. This is good stuff.
Well, and definitely in this story, we're leaning more on magical realism than we tend to. That's an old thing we used to say a lot in the earlier episodes of the show. But it seems to be a lot more. We're just kind of having fun with what's real, what isn't, and this is part of it. And we're also, to go along with that, while Arthur is having this dream, El Boomerang ends up escaping through this Rube Goldberg style mishap where it's one thing goes into one thing and one thing goes into the other, and El Boomerang just ends up going out the window and Arthur has lost it. This is really weird, and by which I mean I'm gonna say something really weird here. This is what I think of when I think of the term blood brothers, or something like that. It's an older trope of cutting open your hand and cutting open your friend's hand, and then it's you've bled together, you're blood brothers. So when I was younger, probably actually around the time where I was originally starting to watch Arthur, this was in the mid to late 90s. So my family had just gotten the internet, and the internet was not as accessible as it is now. It was very much like the dial-up noises. You had to tie up a phone line, all this kind of stuff. And one of the things that I really got online about very quickly was Dragon Ball Z. I was a huge fan of Dragon Ball Z when it started to play on YTV. And so when I, one of the first things that I ever searched for, and thank goodness that this didn't lead me down any inappropriate paths, my friend suggested that I search for Dragon Ball Z pictures. Just go to a search engine and put in Dragon Ball Z pictures. So
I'm going to see some really cool pictures here.
And I did. There were a lot of manga exclusive artwork. There was artwork from the show that we hadn't even got to yet. There were levels of Super Saiyan that I didn't know existed. Anyway, the point of all this is I got really into Dragon Ball Z fandom culture when I was younger. And that included, every once in a while, you'd run across on these fan sites, Dragon Ball Z fan fiction. And what I remember, for some reason, it's always associated with the Blood Brothers thing. I remember this fan fiction where Krillin and Goku became blood brothers. And because Goku's Saiyan blood mixed in with Krillin's human blood, that led to Krillin being able to go Super Saiyan. And I thought that was the coolest thing.
Okay, well, so there's no dark ending to this story. When you set it up, I was like, okay, and then you tried it yourself with your friend.
No.
Now you have monkeypox. No. Okay.
No, it's like I said, it's strange. It's just the strange things that we run into. But yeah, that's what I think when I think of Blood Brothers. I think of Krillin going Super Saiyan, and all the time I spent as a Dragon Ball Z fan when I was 8 or 9 on the internet. and thankfully didn't see anything untoward. Anyway, back to this Arthur episode. So George and his dad are going to go on this walk, and as they get ready to go, Mr. Ratburn joins them, and he understood that he was signing up to do the walk, not to sponsor it, and so he's ready to go. He's got trail mix. He's even memorized the prologue to the Canterbury Tales for entertainment. And how about this fit, Lucas?
Yeah, so is Mr. Ratburn German?
Maybe, like,
because it's just funny that he had the lederhosen ready to go. So he is dressed in like a traditional lederhosen, head to toe. He's got like the fedora with the feather in it. He's got the shorts with the suspenders. The man looks like he's from the Alps. It's quite the outfit.
Yeah, he looks like that. Like that Price is Right game of the going up the Alps, the yodeling one.
The yodeling one, yeah.
So they decide to let him tag along. Meanwhile, we're kind of cutting between this walk that they're going on, and Arthur's at Alberto's birthday party. So he had to think of another gift to give him because he didn't have El Boomerang. So he gives Alberto the comic Dark Bunny versus the Crouton creature, which is literally like a giant crouton with fangs or some such. So on this walk, they're going along. This is like hours and hours. And eventually, as they reach, it's from like the center of Crown City to the clock tower in Elwood City. As they see the clock tower, Mr. Ratburn unfortunately twists his ankle, and he isn't able to continue, and they have to call for help. So that takes a little bit more time off of them. But George and his dad ultimately make it all the way to the cheers of the crowd, the disbelief of people like Francine. He even kicks El Boomerang over to Alberto, who is in the crowd, and that's how they are reunited. And that's the end of that story. I do also want to note that when Mr. Ratburn goes down with the twisted ankle, he refers to George's dad's cell phone as a portable telephone.
Yeah, we're continuing the theme of Mr. Ratburn being a little bit of a Luddite. From him not knowing how to use a computer and such. And maybe that explains why his hiking gear looks like it's from the early 20th century or something. One more thing I'll add before we wrap up this episode. The spot where Mr. Ratburn breaks his ankle, or sprains his ankle rather, we get a view of Elwood City that we haven't really seen before. From this top of this hill looking down, and kind of looking down at the clock tower, to rope this back into us, Will, it kind of looks like Halifax, given that we have kind of a famous clock tower. Yeah, totally. Like it's Harborside. There's if you look at Halifax from up on like Citadel Hill, looking down at the clock tower, you get somewhat of a similar view. Maybe Elwood City has a lot more green, but a clock tower of that type is actually pretty non-standard among cities. Like, for instance, my roommate, he went to Japan, and we have a sister city to Halifax there, and one of the reasons that they are sister cities is they are into like our clock tower, and they have a little model of that clock tower. So I don't know, I thought it was somewhat reminiscent of Halifax, and that aside, I thought that it's a unique angle of Elwood City that we don't normally see. We don't normally see it from far away, kind of looking down of it from on top of a hill. Or the fact that it has it's coastal. That's another thing that I'd never really realized about Elwood City until now.
I didn't even know we had this Japanese sister city. I just learned something new about the place I live.
Let's see. Let's see what it's called.
Ooh, let's get some Lucas Googling.
Yes,
we haven't had that in a while.
It is called Hakodate. And actually, when you look up Halifax Japanese sister city, there's a great picture of these people in front of the tiny version of our clock tower that they have set up.
That's really cool. I'm gonna have to look this up. I'd never heard of this before. See, this is why we should be best podcast in Halifax. We keep learning new stuff about the place where we live. And that's it. Whew. We made it through another season. Season 14 is in the books officially, but we got a couple things to do before we can completely put the bow on it. First of all, let's talk about the ones that we just talked about. So, Lucas, Buster spaces out. What did you make of this one?
So Buster Spaces Out, totally fine episode. I will say that it's very, as far as ensemble episodes go, it's pretty standard. You know, Buster has this problem. He wants to build this rocket ship, and he needs to entrust his friends to help him complete the problem. They have some trials and tribulations along the way, and then they kind of succeed. So it's a little bit boring in terms of plot-wise, but where it kind of separates itself from, like, if another show tried to do something like this, is the strength of the Arthur writing and characters. So even though the plot I found kind of standard and similar to other children's television, especially educational children's television, it still sets itself apart because the individual characterizations are just so strong, and the writing is really good. There's some funny jokes in this episode as well. So yeah, it's not my favorite of the season or anything, but pretty solid. What did you think of it?
I liked it. I think it just all kind of came together in a way that I thought was fun. It's cool to have Buster be a little bit motivated. I like when Buster's motivated. I like when he kind of gets to do stuff. Sometimes you can rely on him as the joke machine or just to fill a very specific role, but I like it when he gets to kind of be the leader because it turns out that when he gets to do stuff, it's like creative and interesting and different from a lot of where the other characters would go. Yeah, you're right. I think that the group dynamics were a little bit weird in terms of it being an ensemble episode, but I thought it was funny. I thought it went along an interesting path, and it was also a decent way to incorporate a guest like Mike Fink and to find out a little bit more about him. So yeah, solid. Not my favorite or anything, but still pretty solid. And I'd also say the same thing about The Long Road Home. I'd say probably actually The Long Road Home maybe a little bit improved in my estimation, because it really went places I didn't expect it to go. Like, I figured that this would be the one where we'd figure out about El Boomerang and, like, kind of wrap that all up. But then we also had time to do this George-centric thing, which, this whole thing could have been about El Boomerang. But instead, they took that and kind of made it the B-plot, kept it very underplayed. And then we instead did this George thing, which I actually found to be more interesting. It was cool, again, to let him have the spotlight. And to have him be very proactive in doing this neat little personal project just because he wanted to. It came from a little bit of, you had to have that opposition in there from Francine and BINKY and all that stuff. But it was just cool to see him motivated and doing something that he wanted to do. And in terms of wrapping up the El Boomerang thing, I thought that was, it's fine. It was, through the whole season, it's been a very light thing going on in the background, and I think it ended well enough as well. Like, at least Arthur got to attribute its return to himself, and Alberto was thankful and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, again, solid episode, and I think put together they were a good double feature.
Yeah, and I like it when the episode at the end of the season feels a little bit different. They give it a little bit of weight.
Yeah,
and here, Arthur tried something that it hasn't done in the past 13 seasons, which is have kind of this, running... I almost want to say gag, but now it's kind of a full-on storyline of, okay, there was this lost ball. It went all over the world and into space. Now we get to see, does it come back? And for a moment there, I really did think it wasn't going to come back when they had the Rube Goldberg machine kind of send it out the door. I was like, oh, they're pulling a trick on us. It's going to be another season of seeing El Boomerang in the corner of the screen. But I don't know, it was something different. And it's certainly something where, in the way we watch it on a week-to-week basis, which is, again, when I was watching Arthur as a kid, not really how I ever watched it, it really gave us something extra to talk about every week. It was like, oh, there's El Boomerang, and so it's cool to see that story come to an end. And yeah, I liked I liked both stories. I liked the B plot and the A plot. I liked that it focused on George. Both episodes about kind of having a goal in mind and setting out and accomplishing that goal despite the hardship that comes before you, right? So that's kind of the theme tying both of these together. But yeah, I agree. And I liked The Long Road Home a little bit more as well.
Right on. Okay, so as I said, We've got a little bit more steps to go before we can officially move on to the next season of Arthur, but we'll be doing so in relatively quick fashion. So thank you, of course, for joining us, not just for this episode, not just for season 14, but for every episode of Elwood City Limits that you've been joining us for so far. So next week on Elwood City Limits, we will be getting you our season 14 recap. As always, Lucas and I have thoughts on the season that was, and we'll be giving our top 5 episodes of the season. Now, that's going to be happening on the free feed.
I'm going to have to play some catch-up. We have a holiday on Monday, and so I'm going to be spending watching, because I feel like this year I owe it to you folks to watch the episodes that I missed, because it seemed like I missed some good ones, so I'll be playing catch-up in order to get that out for this week, or next week, rather.
That's cool, actually. Like, I'm really interested. There could be some favorites in there that you and I haven't talked about, that you and I haven't talked about yet. So I'm really interested to hear what your top 5 is going to end up being. And I'm not even sure where things are going to land, because, I mean, no spoilers, but like, there's a lot of episodes to choose from. So I'm going to be really interested to see where we both come out with that. So that's going to be coming out next week here on the free feed. Now, next week is normally a Patreon week, and it's still going to be, because we have a big thing coming for our patrons next Friday. It's called A Word From Us Kids. And it's the first in what I hope will be, maybe if not a series, then I hope we at least get to do a couple of more episodes. But this one is where I got to sit down with 2 people who were on the Word From Us Kids segment relatively early on in the Arthur cycle. In fact, you may be familiar with them to a degree, because one of them was on quite a bit early. One of them, her name is Catherine Dorr, and she was on the first season of Arthur. And the other one is an interview that we have been getting requested for years now. And finally, the fates aligned, and I got to speak with Holly Holland of Canadian Oklahoma.
Whoa.
It was great. I had a great time speaking with both of them, and the episode is nearly an hour long. We had a lot to talk about, and that's going to be coming to Patreon feeds next Friday. Again, if you want to hear that first, if you don't want to wait, I don't actually know when this is going up on the free feed. It may be coming out a month from now, maybe a bit longer. So if you want to hear it right away, you can pay what you want at patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. I promise, I think you're really going to like this one, and I'm really excited for everybody to hear it. So that's coming out next week. The free feed's getting something, patrons are getting something. And then the week after that, we're getting into season 15 of Arthur. There is, I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about. It's the last traditionally animated season of the show, and we're starting it off with another double episode, and it's called 15. We're going to have to see how Arthur celebrated 15 seasons on the air, but I'm very, very excited to get to that. And yeah, I think it's going to be a fun couple of weeks, and we've got more stuff in the pipeline, including a new ECL season. We've got more Patreon content on the way. Big things are happening. So I hope that you're all enjoying your summer. We're going to be giving you some stuff, whether you're a patron or whether you're on the free feed, to help you enjoy it. And for now, once again, I've got the window open here. I'm just going to keep chugging water and hoping that the next rain that we're getting is going to clear this air a little bit.
Yeah, I hope so too, because it's, whew.
We're just going to, I mean, and Lucas, I don't have the Alpine in my fridge, so I don't know.
Exactly. That's the cure, Will. That's the cure. It's the magic nectar. Man. Do our listeners know what Alpine is? I feel like they only have it they only have it. It's like a New Brunswick thing more so than a Nova Scotia thing.
I was gonna say, Lucas, I have to admit, I don't even think I know what Alpine is.
It's a like a even lighter version of Moosehead. I think it's made by Moosehead. And it's kind of like if you were to like kind of go coast to coast with the crappy beers, it's like, okay, Nova Scotia, it's Olid, but New Brunswick is Alpine. And let me tell you, that stuff is the nectar of the gods.
Where else are you going to get this kind of talk about the crappy beers of the Atlantic provinces than on the best podcast in Halifax? Please, we'll let you know if and when we get nominated. But for now, My name's Will Young. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Elwood City Limits. We'll see you at the Season 14 recap or on the Patreon feed for the first episode of A Word From Us Kids. And for Lucas Mancini.
Ooh, the moon's too hard. Why don't you just go to Seattle?
We'll see you next